For episode 2 of season 4, Ali leads the way with a great sauce to add to your ribs, and we jump in on some bourbon talk towards the end. Hello. Welcome to Eat This, Drink That. This is episode 2 we got with Fireside. I've had horrible allergies over here in Los Angeles, so excuse me for my voice at this point. But anyways, we're at Eat This, Drink That. If you guys don't know the setup, we have Steve doing the Drink That part of the show, and we have Ali doing the Eat This part of the show. And so today we are going to be doing an Eat This with Ali.
Man, this whole thing, this new setup, our upgrades from what we've done before, it's awesome. It's just fun. I feel like I'm really in my studio. Gentlemen, this season we've been talking about bourbon. And whenever Steve brings up bourbon, I think about the gift from the gods. You can't smell this, but I wish you could. This is, in peach paper, the real deal, bona fide. 1/3 of the Texas Trinity. I have some spare ribs here, guys. And before I literally put rendered pork fat all over my freaking countertop, I'm just going to let this sit down for a second. You should be able to see it on this cam. I went and picked up some... What's that?
That looks great. It's right on camera.
This is... Oh, boys. Oh, this... That, gentlemen, that is a...
Show the B camera.
Yeah, this is a real deal. This is 1/3 of the Texas Trinity, guys. You see that red hue? That is from Post Oak. This is from Micklethwait Barbecue in East Austin. They are part of the craft barbecue movement. So ever since Aaron Franklin kind of upped the ante, some other people followed suit, like Tom Micklethwait, starting in 2012, I believe is when his trailer started. This is one of those ribs where it's not like fall off the bone per se, but if that doesn't speak volumes,
those look amazing.
It's pull apart.
So it is pork and it is spare ribs, correct?
Pork, spare rib. I'm overwhelmed for a second. These are basically semi akin to what you would get in Memphis. It's a dry rub. There's not a lot of sauce on here. See that finger? No, there's no sauce on there. It's a little wet, but that's it.
What's the saucier one? Is that Kansas City has the saucier barbecue, or St. Louis, or?
So Kansas City barbecue is definitely known for their sauce. In Memphis, you can get dry ribs or wet. You can literally indicate. In the Carolinas, they do sauce as well. Sometimes it's mustard based. Sometimes it's very vinegar based. It's very thin, right? KC barbecue sauce is the barbecue sauce you grew up with. It is thick. It is smoky. It is tangy. It is kind of the definitive barbecue sauce. Kind of hard to beat if that's what you're craving. You get barbecue sauce in joints here, but the truth is, much like steak, you don't really need sauce for great steak. You know what I mean? You have to make a deliberate thing. So barbecue here isn't really made for sauce. That being said, I think different sauces can work so well, and that's what I wanted to show you guys today. So I wanted to get this rib because it's a dry rib. There's no conflicting sauce on here, and I wanted to basically make you guys, essentially, it's a salad dressing that happens to be freaking delicious. And I say that knowing that some of the vinaigrettes that I love also are great sauces. Italian salsa verde is essentially a vinaigrette. Chimichurri is essentially a vinaigrette. You're talking about acid and fat mixed together, whatever. So let's make gomai. If you ever go to Japanese izakaya, small plates place, gomai will usually be like a spinach salad. It'll be blanched. It'll be cold. It'll be chopped up or maybe kind of like just stringy or whatever. And it's tossed in this tahini sesame soy dressing, okay? The other day I was making some and I messed up. I totally messed up. I used too much tahini. And just earlier when I was like, I need to practice this. I'm like, no, I'm going to try and recreate my mistake. Because my mistake was so thick that I was like, this would be radical to dip ribs in, or ribs. For me,
Yeah.
barbecue is ribs because that's what I like to make. I'm not going to make brisket.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is, this is some tahini, and I don't know. Do you guys ever use tahini? You guys use it at home?
Occasionally.
Very
Yeah.
rarely, but yeah, occasionally. Definitely. If you grew up in sort of East Los Angeles in any regard, you're going to be exposed to it. Whether it's
Tahini happens in Glendale. It happens
Glendale,
in the
Burbank,
valley. Yeah,
East Hollywood near Thai Town. There's a lot of great restaurants that you get exposed to in LA for that.
yeah, tons, right?
What is tahini again?
So what this is actually, great question, Mr. Greer. This is ground sesame seeds. It's just sesame seeds that are grounded into a paste. It's almost like if peanut butter was saucy, right? Now, I've been using tahini because I've been cooking a lot more the last couple of years. It's been part of my content. I actually got a fresh bottle. And the reason why I got a fresh bottle is what happens with tahini is when you get these big ones or whatever, these jars, it gets stuck in the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So like you got to scrape it out and stuff. So
Okay.
I actually think for $1 or $2 more, the squeeze bottle's the way to go. But being the thrifty mofo that I am, I was able to get this stuff nice and loosened up. Now, like I said, I was going to be like, oh, let me measure this stuff out. Come on, dude. This is, to me, like salad dressing and some sauces is like, you should be able to eye this, right? So we're getting to about 1/4 cup. So if you see the bowl and you see this, should be, maybe it's a little more. That's all good. I don't know. I just don't like to waste stuff. I hate it when like you pour things into one measuring cup or spoon and then half the shit is still in there. Like, what the hell's the point of that? So anyways, about 1/4 cup of tahini, right? Now we're gonna do 2 tablespoons of, I put this all in the right order because it's like 2 tablespoons and then teaspoons. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar. Okay. It's so funny. I feel like showing it off, but you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere. All right.
I recognize the label immediately, too.
Oh, yeah. Come on. This is not a rare endangered one. Yeah, I went to the supermarket. So 2 tablespoons, that's about half of 1/4 cup. Like I said, I'm eyeing it. I don't care. Just trying to get this done. Now, put everything away. I feel like I'm a mixologist today. I feel like this is what Steve's doing.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, especially with that apron.
Yeah, you like this thing? I wish it was a little more taut. It's a little ragged. So now we're going to do about 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, right? Okay. Then we're going to add some of this stuff. Mirin, rice wine. Now, I'd love to tell you the difference between mirin and rice vinegar. Sometimes if I run out of one, I'm like, I have the other one, right? But the recipe calls for it, so I add it in there. And also, like, this stuff just sits around. I've had this for a bit. So I'm always, if I can use it, let's get rid of this stuff. This isn't doing me anything.
I feel like mirin has some sugar in it.
But so this is sweet as heck too, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I can't remember. There is a difference, and I feel like it's sugar.
Well, this is an actual wine. So for sure. You know what I mean? For sure.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, I don't go through it as fast as the rice vinegar. So, anyways. And now we're going to add, I added my soy sauce. I need sesame oil. Sesame oil. Now,
I think one of the themes that's definitely emerged during all of our episodes is sort of the concept of buying something, maybe for one event, and then it sits around for months afterwards. How do we continue to use? But Ollie, I guess that's just part of being an adult. You just got to collect bottles of stuff and try and use it before
you guys
it goes
remember? Bad. You remember my pantry list?
That's right.
Here we go. How could we forget the diagram?
Yes, Steve has.
It looked like that Tom and you remember that Tom and Jerry cartoon where like it was all looked like blue and white architecture plans. That's like when Steve's like, "Hey, I got something to show you," and it's just this hand drawn. It's almost like calligraphy. It's like Greer's going to be the guy who's like, "Oh yeah, I write with a quill on occasionally." Like, what in the hell is going on? So I just started to mix this up. I still need to add the sesame oil. Now, I can tell you already, like, just look at it. This almost looks like freaking like batter. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we're making frosting and stuff. And that's
Hey,
because I went
Ali.
so heavy on the tahini. If you were doing a dressing, you would literally add water right now, just for consistency, right?
Okay.
So it's not just like so thick. But I don't care because I'm gonna stick ribs in this thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whole other ball game.
And
so now
you
we're gonna
can't
add a
really
little sesame
thin it-
oil.
You can't thin it out with the rice vinegar, right? Because that'll throw off the ratios too much.
You know, like you can do anything. You know what I mean? That's the truth of it. You can do anything. I just remember when I made this before, and I was like, "Oh damn, it's so thick." But then I tasted it, and I was like, "This is amazing, just amazing."
Yeah.
And I realized too, and I googled this. Sesame sauce can be a tahini, sesame sauce essentially. Tahini can be a replacement or a substitute for miso. You know what I mean? So like, you know, you gotta like go buy miso. You know, all these things, right? I don't have to go buy all this stuff. I mean, I'm sitting around with this mirin all day. You know what I mean? If you have mirin at home, let's use it, guys. Let's get rid of this stuff.
Hey, how much sesame oil are you adding? Is it to taste or?
So, damn, as it is so, it's magnificently nutty. It's sweet, and it's got umami. Like I just somehow wish I could shove this stuff right through the app so you guys can try this stuff.
Oh,
it's
I'm
just
starving.
wildly different. Because technically this is a riff off a dressing, there should be basically, you know, I like the taste of this. The thickness, from a texture point of view, the tahini dominates. From a taste point of view, it's fine. It's just too thick for a dressing per se. You would have to thin this stuff out. So I would probably do equal parts vinegar and sesame oil for consistency.
Yeah.
And then eventually, maybe I would add a little bit of mirin and soy in case I felt like there wasn't as much universal oomph, right? But the bottom line is like, you're going to taste the tahini first and foremost. You know what I mean? So then that's just, you know, the ratio of it. In fact, yeah, go ahead.
Ali, I was just going to say, I'm a little lost. I would love if you just went over the ingredients like a checklist almost really quick.
Yeah, for sure.
And just sort of be like, this is what it is.
For sure.
To sort of circle around quickly.
Got it. So, you know, going right down the list, we started with a quarter cup of tahini, okay? Then we did 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. We did 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar.
Okay.
Then we did a tablespoon of rice wine, mirin. And then we did a tablespoon of sesame oil, right?
All right.
So that, in its essence, is the gomai dressing. Right?
Okay.
I went heavy on the tahini because I was looking for something thick. And honestly, like the way this is, like right now, like it's still got some viscosity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this is something that I would literally take my brush, paint the ribs on when they're like kind of like getting towards the finish line of the smoker, wrap that in paper, and let those suckers ride. For these purposes, though, I'm just going to let it rock as a great dipping sauce, too.
Now, the ribs, did you get those yesterday? Did you get those today, this morning?
An hour ago.
You got them an
I
hour
got
ago.
these an hour ago, dude. Oh, yeah.
Are you gonna heat them up? Are you gonna eat them as is? What's the deal?
So I actually got these, you know, they're smoked today. And great little plan here. If you get it in peach paper, if you have peach paper, I keep the meat wrapped in peach paper and I set my oven to keep warm. And it's solid. I mean, technically, a lot of the barbecue you're getting, it's not like, oh, wait, we just finished it from the smoker. They've smoked it for X amount of hours, and then they're keeping it in some sort of holder. And what happened was a lot of barbecue joints for catering started doing that, and literally they found out that the barbecue was better when it rested. So now that's been a whole new thing. Like some of the more old school legendary barbecue places like Louis Mueller's, up in like Tyler, Texas. It's been around forever. Old school. The guy's like, why is our catered brisket better than what we're serving at the restaurant? And they realize the hold time is exactly it. So there's, you know, restaurants have those holders, you know what I mean? Just for service to keep the meat warm or whatever. So when I make ribs, I stick them in the cooler after they're done. Like ribs, they don't taste, they get texture-wise phenomenally better when you pull them, let them cool, wrap them, rest it again. It's like a whole other hour's worth of time right there, you know? So it ain't piping hot, you know?
Right.
That's interesting.
Hey,
Oh,
real
dude,
quick,
yeah.
I just looked up the differences between mirin and rice vinegar.
Oh, awesome.
Mirin is a sweetened rice wine, and obviously rice vinegar is just a vinegar from rice. So the mirin is sweet, and the rice vinegar is tangy.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of interesting. I had this idea, but I've never actually had the rib with this sauce. I can literally tell you, I'm going to add more vinegar, more mirin, more soy sauce. Because the tahini is kind of thick. It's very nutty. And I need something more to cut that stuff. I like how it tastes on its own. So I think the point of this, it's just like salad dressing. You know what I mean? You don't really need a recipe. You can just start throwing down in the bowl and see where it takes you. You know?
Yeah.
But that's the lesson here, boys.
Hey,
You know what I mean? Think outside the
would you
barbecue
ever
sauce.
add toasted sesame seeds or black sesame seeds, or would that change the texture too much?
So when you do a gomai, the actual, blanched, cooled spinach salad, it does have sesame seeds in it.
Okay.
It's fun because then
But
you
you
bite
put 'em
into the
after,
sesame seed and it
right?
plays off those similar notes, you know?
Yeah.
I would go white because it's going to look cooler. You know what I mean? You'll see it better.
Yeah.
The black sesame seed looks great on. I originally started to do this when I do hot smoked salmon, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And black sesame seeds on salmon, that'll get your likes on the gram. I'll tell you that right now. Because you have that orange, that deep orange hue, and then those little black dots.
Yeah, I do that with red miso and black sesame seeds for salmon. And then everything else too, the mirin, the rice vinegar, etc.
So it's funny, I've eaten miso. I'm just got 2 tablespoons. I'm just doubling it down, changing this up a bit. But I've never, I don't even know, because you just buy it. I don't even know, how it's made. I know nothing about miso, except that it tastes
I
amazing.
can't remember either. It's a soy paste, and the color of the actual miso has something to do with production. I like the red because it looks cool.
Yeah.
It's and that's another thing. So I just you can probably see this. So I've just doubled down a bit here.
You know what? Your B camera looks a little frozen for some reason.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure what to do about that.
Oh yeah. Wait.
Let's see. Ollie's B cam is frozen here.
Oh, we froze a bit. Let me
Technical difficulties.
Let's bring you back.
You might just need to log out and log back in, but I know it's you have your camera positioned, so that might be hard to do.
Let's see what we can do. Let's see if I can't just come back. In the meantime, while that's coming back, so I just added more of everything except for the tahini. For part of it is now it's a little bit runny or whatever, but really I just thought the tahini was as I was tasting it with the rib, I was like, you know what? Let's add more of the acid. Let's add more of the salt because it was just kind of really nutty, But
I mean, you know what? What's interesting you bring up, Ali, is the viscosity thing, because I think a lot of the average American is probably exposed to a barbecue sauce out of a bottle, and it's just very thick and gooey. And then when you start sort of exploring barbecue later in life, you realize some of the best barbecue sauces are almost like watery. Like there's a runniness to some of the best ones. They're obviously, there's good ones in both genres. It's just you don't normally have, in your fridge this viscous barbecue sauce as around the house typically until you sort of go outside and you're like, oh my gosh, some of the best ones are very runny. And
so that's what I find really fascinating. For whatever it's worth, Texas has had a big renaissance with barbecue. And a big part of that is how can we use better meat? How can we really nail the texture? How do we honestly raise the bar? You know what I mean? People are very active about going, let's make this better. What are you doing next? Da, 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 da. And basically you start to throw out these kind of old rules, right? These rules of barbecue sauce is supposed to taste like, barbecue is supposed to be like a Weber grill, some burnt chicken, sauce that's burning on the grill. You know what I mean? It doesn't even make sense, right? And when you're having stuff like pulled pork That's the shoulder. That's slowly cooked until all that fat renders. It's so fat. You need acid to cut it. Pure. I
Right.
mean, this is like all the time when Steve's talking about, all the wines and stuff like that. All those old world wines are so much more bracing. They're not cocktail wines because you're only getting half the experience. Like, I'm tasting this, but the moment I dunked that rib in it, I had to change what I was doing, right? And I think, yeah, man, I think I would much rather have, like, a sauce that makes me think than a sauce that makes me nostalgic. And also, like, this rib, too, like, Texas barbecue. Oh, wait, hang on. Can I get in here? I'm going to accept.
I just invited you back, your B camera. Yeah.
Hang tight. Okay, fireside B cam. But, I'm going to show you here, like, this thing, see, like, part of the Texas barbecue experience is a tremendous amount of, like, pepper fleck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got this, like, like, good rub, coarse ground black pepper and stuff. You just need something that's going to, why go sweet there? You know what I mean? I want something that's just, like, this thing is so savory. It's more like beef jerky than pork candy. Some barbecue is candy. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's what people love. Some people will be like, this is, but that ain't this. That ain't Central Texas barbecue, man. You know what I mean? This is for savory eaters.
What species of wood are they using at that place?
Oak, post oak. Post oak.
Okay.
Period.
Is that almost universal in Central Texas?
So yeah, and the most basic idea comes down to this. That's what grows. That's just the wood that's available. So there you go. Post oak is heavy. It's a heavy smoke. I was at a barbecue event the other day, and I love when you meet like a Texan, right? And we were talking about how, like, sometimes, like, it's funny. Everyone loves brisket, right? But a little goes a long way. Also, when you smoke brisket on oak, it's real heavy. Like, we all talk, and there's a little secret. You get the itis. You know what I mean? Like, you have a couple bites of this stuff, and you're like, oh my God. Like, I guarantee you can eat way more Carolina barbecue than you can Texas barbecue.
Yes.
Texas barbecue is real heavy. It's just heavy. And the number one factor of that is going to be post oak. Now, some people do mesquite, and it's because they can get it. It's more of a South Texas thing, but it's not as heavy. Right. I talked to a guy, and he goes, dude, the reason why you're like, I had a lot. I had too much. People are like, the meat sweats. Yeah. Dude, it's that post oak is heavy. It's heavy stuff.
You made a really good point earlier. Sorry, Ryan.
That's okay.
You made a really good point about contrast, the sweetness or the kind of more tangy style on the sauces. I was thinking about what you would drink bourbon-wise with this.
I was going to say, let's get into the bourbon. Let's get into the drink.
Oh, fair point. I really wish you could try this. I think you'd flip out.
Uh-oh. Hold on, let me...
Actually, I'm not sure if we need his overhead anymore.
I just muted him, but...
Are we over the overhead? It's fine.
Well, no, only because I don't know if you... Are you cooking some more?
Technically, I did bowl mixing, but no.
You did bowl mixing. We can leave it off for now. Let's get into the drink that.
Yeah, okay. And this is... You could just sit around and sip on bourbon. A traditional high rye recipe, but more importantly, because of that beautiful rib and the heavier stuff, that sauce, I would do a higher proof.
Oh yeah,
higher proof, one rock.
Steve, you just said a typical high rye recipe. What would that be? Like, what would be typical?
So if you remember from the last episode, when we kind of talked about mash bills and whatever the second grain is going to be, we'll kind of define the flavor profile of that bourbon, where, Maker's Mark and then those really expensive Pappy Van Winkles and all that from Buffalo Trace, those are all wheated. So they're softer.
Gotcha.
Maker's Mark is very, very soft. It's like 16 or 15% wheat for the second grain.
That's why it's everyone's gateway whiskey. They start getting into it.
Yeah, and when Maker's Mark created that in the 80s, the traditional recipe of a high rye, which is 15 to 20%, and in the case of Four Roses, up to 30% rye, that was the typical no one talked about mash bills in the 80s. This is what bourbon tastes like. It's sweet
Mm-hmm.
and spicy.
Okay.
And then you have low rye recipes too. It's no wheat, it's just lower rye. So it's a little softer or less spicy than. So Four Roses is a high rye. Remember the Old Forester 100 proof that we were
Yep.
using last
Mm.
week? That's a high rye. Whereas Buffalo Trace is a low rye recipe. And
Oh.
I think so is George T. Stagg.
So when you say that, that means it's sweeter. So Buffalo Trace is sweeter.
Well, it's just less spicy. The corn, most of the recipes on the corn is staying roughly the same, 70%. The char on the barrel, which is giving you a lot of that vanilla caramel sweetness, most people are using roughly the same char level. And we'll talk about that in a future episode. We'll go into stylistic differences and what created those quality factors. I would do something for this. Stay in the traditional recipe, any kind of high rye recipe. But I think more important, you want some alcohol. You want a little more than 40% ABV or 80 proof.
Right.
You want to get up to 90 or 100 proof.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Like whiskey on its own or in a cocktail? What do you think would be better with this? And I want to tell you, like, there is a lot, I think, to like, if I was just eating the barbecue on its own, I'd be like, drink what you like. You know what I mean? That's the Steve motto. Drink what you like. Drink what you like. But this is, we got weird today. I mean, look, this looks like I'm, making a chocolate cake over here. You know what I mean? But I'm ducking ribs in this stuff. So what would you say?
So
and it is Japanese.
Usually, I would say batch up some cocktails, make it a fun little relaxing afternoon. You could do some version of that kind of classic recipe that we played around with a few weeks ago with apple juice and some honey and some bourbon. But in this case, because of all the flavor coming from that sauce, all the flavor coming from those ribs, I would kick back with just some neat or on the rocks, high rye, high proof bourbon and sip.
All right. I have to tell you, thanks to our last episode, you're the reason why I had a $30 cocktail the other day. It's because I was at the bar and I'm looking at these whiskeys.
Denver,
shoot! I wish I wrote it down. It was in Denver. It was a local whiskey, and they had three bottles. I chose the bonded because I went to the Steve Greer school of thinking, where bonded is better. It was 25. It was good though. It was real good. Because then when I got too close for missiles and I switched to guns, I went back to my bullet bourbon at 12 a pour, and I was like, "Yeah, this tastes like it's half the price." You know what I mean? I mean, what are you gonna say? I know what was better, not me spending $50 on 2 drinks.
Yeah, I still can't believe you were in Denver when I was on the road and in the mountains. It's just bizarre.
Top secret. We can't talk about anything more than that's it. We can just say I was in Denver. But let me tell you, that was pretty wild.
Was it Breckenridge whiskey, Stranahan's, Woody Creek, or Laws?
I think it was Laws.
Yeah, it was probably Laws. LAW''S. So a lot of those guys, I don't know for sure, but most of them have to buy a lot of their older bourbons, or their bourbons and their whiskeys, because it takes time. It takes time to produce and age. But Laws, I think, is starting to produce from their own grains that they're grown locally. I'm not sure which one you had, and I'm not a master of.
I'm telling you, it was bonded, but I have to look at I'd pull up the receipt, but it's somewhere on my phone.
Now, what's interesting about this is, Steve had his recommendation, but I see barbecue, and I definitely think that a Coke or a Pepsi of that nature goes great with barbecue. And
Coca-Cola.
So part of me feels like just the dumb drink of a whiskey and Coke would probably go really well with what Ollie's doing.
Hey man, here that's a good question, Steve. Can we make Jack and Coke better than just Jack and Coke? Is there a way to embrace cola and whiskey?
So you could not use Jack Daniels and use a better Kentucky bourbon. You start there.
Yeah.
So like what would we say?
I'm not a big
Maker,
I'm
Old
not a big
Forester?
fan of Jack Daniels. What were you saying, Ryan?
I was just saying like the Old Forester from last week, Maker's Mark. What
Yeah.
would you Buffalo Trace? Which ones are you thinking go good with a Coke?
That Old Foe, because you want to spend a little less money if you're just throwing down with some Coca-Cola and some. You can get Mexican Coke. It's a little less sugar and it's not corn syrup. It's actual sugar cane. Or
Yeah.
there are some producers of old recipe Coca-Cola, root beers, that whole plethora of pop. I
Yeah.
just can't remember the name of the producers.
Whole
But
Food soda. You got to go
Yeah.
get Whole Food soda.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
could do that.
I mean, I
love
assume.
Mexican. Yeah.
Whole
God,
Food
it
soda.
begins with an F. The brand begins with an F, I believe. But there's several producers of old school pop recipes. You can get one of those. There's more sassafras in the Coca-Cola version, I believe. But come on, there's nothing wrong with Mexican Coke. And Old Foe, just get the regular 86 Old Foe, Old Forester.
Oh, I
Or
like Ofo. Is that
Old
the
Foe.
new? I can't be bothered to say Forester or the letter
I-
D.
The N makes
So
that up.
what's the ratio? Because you know what, I think this is actually something. I think I'm gonna try. I'm gonna post a bowl of this, a picture of this with the rib.
Cool.
Throw down the recipe, and then I think we should do a proper Steve's Jack and Coke. Or not Jack and Coke, whatever that is. So, Old Foe, what's the ratio here? Mexican Coke, what's the ratio?
I'll be very honest. And it's funny, I just had this Coca-Cola discussion earlier in the week when I was on the road, and I don't drink them. So,
He won't give us a recipe.
but I would also, my philosophy, I want to taste the spirit
Right.
before the mixer. So I would almost do 2-to-1. It really depends on your preference.
One part
you-
Coke is what you're saying. One part
Yeah.
Coke. Yes.
Yeah, 1 part Coca-Cola, more bourbon.
But do you shake it? Like, what happens
No,
when
no.
you're
You
using...
literally just pour, and this is the way you can do the recipe ratio. So
Okay.
Ryan, you got your glass, and you can get just a highball Tom Collins glass for this. You don't have to get a Pretty Rocks glass. You just get a Coca-Cola glass
Yeah.
and put the ice in. Pour in your bourbon. Start with your Coca-Cola, the Mexican Coke, until you like
I see.
the flavor.
Add to taste.
Yeah.
There you go.
You might get up to 1-to-1. It might be 2 ounces of bourbon, 2 ounces of Coca-Cola. Some people might get all the way up to 4 ounces of Coke and 2 ounces of bourbon.
If
It's
you taste
really-
it before
a
you add
splash.
the Coke, look out for
Yeah.
that.
I could see a splash. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
splash.
Maybe a little lime wedge on the side, and you're
Yeah.
just being different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're just being, because this is different. This is
Yeah.
weird. A lot
Yeah.
of people would be like, "What are you doing?" But I'll tell you, one of the most exciting barbecue places I think that's come out is this Egyptian barbecue dude. The guy's from
No
Egypt,
way.
moved here
Wow.
from 2012. He just started saying KG barbecue. He's nuts. He does
Very
like a pomegranate barbecue sauce that's actually amazing. He does these like yellow rice bowls with cashews, and then can throw
Yes.
the meat in there too. Pomegranate ribs, like he's got all this stuff going on. But his sauces are this pomegranate barbecue sauce and this tahini. My plate, had the brisket, had some ribs, yada yada. Oh, and he does rack of lamb. So add that to your smoked platter plate. You big
Yes.
fat rack of lamb. And my plate would just have a pool of tahini and then this
Yep.
pomegranate sauce. And then he just started mixing together. And it's almost like just the way that combination worked of something so nutty
Yeah.
and then something like tart and sweet, and obviously there's salt in there too. It's almost like how PB&J are like, why does this work together? And then you just, he would be like, dip this and that, dip that and that. I'm like, nah, at the end of the day, I was like, just getting messy. And again, I'm talking about a barbecue that is built to not need sauce. Built
Yep.
to not need sauce. So I think what you got to do is rethink what the sauce can be. Like,
Yeah.
don't go for we don't do meat candy in Texas.
No.
It's not
No.
meat candy barbecue. That's just, and the thing is when you think about barbecue you grew up with, right? You know, like that backyard stuff and that sauce, that's going to be that KC sauce or whatever.
Hmm.
That's not what this is. You
Right.
know, you're talking about rubs that are dominated with like salt, coarse ground salt and pepper. Some people think all Texas barbecue rub is salt and pepper, and
Right.
some people will embrace that. There's other things too, but yeah, it's bold. So I think you got to get bold with your sauce decisions. You know what I mean?
And we can get bold with the drink too. And just so you know, I'm more of a Carolina fan. I like the tangy vinegar-based sauces and more pork than
Yeah.
yeah. But I like this idea of the ratio of whiskey and Coke. We're not even going to say Jack and Coke. We'll call it whiskey and Coke.
Whiskey.
That's cool.
Yeah, we should
That's
do
cool.
an Instagram post,
Yeah.
somehow interactive.
Yeah.
What is your ratio? Because mine would be I would wave an unopened bottle of Coca-Cola over the bourbon and I would set it to the side.
To give it the essence.
You know, I'm gonna
You
throw
might
this
get
out
up
there
to
too
4
because I
ounces.
think you guys can easily make this is really easy. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? This is just
Yeah.
like I swear to God. I mean, a lot. Maybe the mirin is the extra ask people may not have, but you should have rice vinegar. You should have multiple vinegars in your pantry. I know Steve's
do.
got, along with his 19 different mustards. You know, he's probably got like 11 different vinegars. But this is something you can totally make, and I just throw this out there. Even if you can't go and get like a beautiful rib like this, right? Or if you can't make them, this is like go get a freaking good pork chop, man.
Yeah.
Good pork chop. Put a fat sear on it. You know what I mean? You don't even have to do a whole lot to it. This will do a ton of work. That, some mashed sweet potatoes, right? Some sort of green. I don't know. Maybe
I
it's
think
just
so
new.
too, Ali. Even though it's like an easy recipe, I mean, I don't know. If I made that in my kitchen, I'd feel like a scientist or something, and I think it would, just make your dinner like a million times. You'd be like, yeah, check out this sauce I made, babe. You know, just
Yeah,
yeah.
it is. And I almost think
non-chefs for the non-chefs.
getting sauce weird is fascinating. I did it was really, it's just a seared tuna salad, but the dressing, I was like, why is this stuff like crap? It's like crap. And what it was is soy sauce, olive oil, and lime. When I added those together and I coated chunks of seared tuna and avocado, it's like, it literally, you're like, I'm at the restaurant, because it's these flavors that you just don't encounter. You know what I mean? You don't encounter that stuff. Like soy sauce, you know, if you're saying soy sauce, I'm like, oh, we better get sesame oil. We have to like somehow keep it in these little, you know, bundles. You know what I mean? Keep it in this little section here and that section here. But like crossing over stuff, using Asian sauces and barbecue, I mean, it's a
You got
no-brainer.
weird this
you know?
week, Ali. You definitely got weird. You lived up to your self hype.
Awesome.
Totally weird. Very
weird.
weird.
It looks like I'm baking a cake. What the heck's going on?
Meat cake.
So, Steve, what any insights into what next week is going to yield?
So we're going to go into the cocktail itself is a surprise. Someone is
Someone's feeding back a little bit out of nowhere.
We'll jump up on a really different cocktail. I got to finish my decision making on that, but we're going to talk a little bit about production and go back into why that whole proof rule really matters, and we'll talk about actually how bourbon is made very generically, but we're going to talk about how bourbon is made, why it's different.
Cool.
Yeah,
sounds
it's
good.
going to be fun.
Well, thank you for episode 2. You guys, if you've made it this far, we are on most social media platforms as ETDT Official. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. Both of those we keep posted on schedule and stuff like that. And we have a YouTube page. So if you go to our Instagram or our Twitter, that's going to be in our link tree. We just posted a link tree on our pages so you can get to various just have more accessibility to where we are. We're mainly on Fireside right now, but we do have all these social media and YouTube things as well. You can check out episodes 21 through 46 on our YouTube page. And so go check out old episodes. You'll see why we sort of bring up some of these same topics over and over again, like Ali and Steve's just general weirdness. And yeah, and so I don't know, Ali or Steve,
Awesome.
if you guys have any finalizing words before we log out today from Fireside.
I'll say this: do yourself a favor. Go out there, drink something expensive. I did it. I had a $25 glass of whiskey. No regrets. I appreciated it, and I moved on to the cheap stuff. But definitely break your habit.
Our Cheap Eats host saying, "Get the expensive drink." Once in a
I'd
while.
rather spend your money on something different. Just saying.
There you go.
And one parting note on that: at the very end of this season, I think episode 8, November 17th, I believe, we're going to blind taste Ali and Ryan on four different bourbons, four different styles, 4 different price points. They have no idea what they're going to be drinking, and we're going to hear from them their favorite that day. So, and we'll dive into bourbon slowly through these 8 episodes this month.
Yes. So watch us get tanked at the end of this season.
When we do the blind taste test, how do you sort of cleanse your palate? Do you do just water?
You won't need to really with these, only because you're doing 4. You're not tasting that many. It'll be okay.
Okay.
You could always have some of those ribs. Ali could mail them to us.
I mean, that's not impossible. Gold belly.
Awesome, guys.
Thank you guys so much. We have we have episode 1 on replay on this channel. I'm going to have this one posted in the next 24 hours. I just might need to trim a little of the intro because it has our green room on there. But anyways, thank you guys, Ali, for your Eat This. Steve, thank you for your Drink That. We will see you next Saturday at 11 Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Ali is going to be at 1 and Steve's going to be at 12.
Yes,
Mountain.
we're all over the map.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I'm going to log out here because we left our show running for 5 hours a couple weeks ago.
That was like a test. That was just a test to see if people were paying attention.
That was a test show.
So you're going to hit the end show button, Ryan?
Yep, I'm doing it.
Okay. I'll see you guys next week.
Saturday. Thank you, Ali, for your show today.
No problem.
Yes.
And check out Mickle White Barbecue. They're one of the best in town.
Bye.